this thing. I was trying to stop like Grayson's slumlord from
Okay.
fucking that up. Took up
We
some of my.
are
Oh, okay, good.
live.
Okay,
Sorry. Sorry. Just cut you off. Like, I got my stories in, so we're going here. We don't need more of your stories.
well, at least I didn't say anything like that.
That's why I interrupted.
Wait, before you go off on a rant, before you start talking about flipping the money changers tables, or like, wait, that's not what I meant. Okay. Anyway, hi, welcome. We're live.
Tell your friends you're listening to the Verhoeven Effect podcast. I'm Conlon.
And I'm Nathan.
We have another very special episode. We have the 1986 movie Blue Velvet, which first came out on October 23rd, 1986 in Italy.
Nice.
I guess would be for obvious reasons because this is a Dino De Laurentiis production. So I think he's Italian, or at least he's heavily associated with Italians.
It sounds Italian.
Okay. We've talked about him before because he produced Red Sonja. He is a crazy, eccentric producer with seemingly lots of money and no money all at the same time. It's
one of those guys.
Yep.
Like, how does he do this? Because we always think, because I'm guilty of I don't have a great imagination really, and I'm guilty of a lot of linear thought. It's like, well, if you want to build something, you start by laying one stone at a time until you get to this point. But then you hear about these guys that come along, and it's like they capture funding from somewhere. Now, 10 movies don't make money. One of them is a huge hit, but they were all made for the same budget. So basically, the net balance at the end of that is zero. But somehow, people are living in houses. They're talking Hollywood studios into having things, and it's like, okay, cool. Yes, I guess I lack imagination.
Nathan, I doubt you saw this in the movie theaters. When did you first become aware of Blue Velvet?
Oh, I didn't see this. I was after I was probably my senior year of high school.
Okay.
I watched it. So like 92, 93 is when I first really sat down and.
Okay, so you probably saw Twin Peaks before you saw this.
My entry to David Lynch, besides Dune, which I did watch when I was a lot younger, but I don't. That was just like a cool movie. I didn't really associate that with like the stamp of David Lynch. No, I didn't. David Lynch wasn't a thing until the Twin Peaks TV show. And then I really started getting into like, well, let's watch Eraserhead. That's at the library. Let's watch. But I think this came along in my HBO days, which was interesting where I watched it before. Well, Max now. But,
Max, yeah.
But yeah, I watched it on HBO again for this.
Yeah, Dune was probably also my first David Lynch movie, but yeah, again, it's like, it doesn't really have the stamp, but it does have weirdness, so there is the air of David Lynch to it.
Oh, it's a David Lynch movie, but it didn't. He was just working off someone else's material.
Yeah,
I mean, I know some people hate it, some people revisit it as a classic. I always liked it as a cult classic.
Yeah,
but yeah, this movie's like definitely like. Oh, this is the beta for Twin Peaks. This is Blue Velvet is Twin Peaks beta, David Lynch, because a lot of the ideas in Pink or in Blue Velvet are in Twin Peaks.
Yeah,
including Lumbertown.
I mean, there's actually a lot of things when rewatching this is like, this has a lot of DNA for a lot of. Well, I've also never seen Wild at Heart, and I remember there was something where. There was trivia that he directed the Wild Heart music video. It's like, well, that's iconic, and it's like, no, not the black and white one where Chris Isaac is rolling around with a supermodel. A different guy directed that. When Wild at Heart came out, they did like a cut. They did like a new music video for Wicked Games with footage from Wild at Heart, which won like some MTV Music Video award. It's like, oh, okay, so that's way different. But anyways, I watched that music video and it's like, oh, like there's like the weird like where they're just like have a camera on a car and they're just shining the light on the side of the road. It's like, oh, that's in Wild at Heart. That's in Lost Highway. I mean, that's half of Lost Highway is just that shot. So it's like, there's a lot like, oh, this shot's from that movie and that movie too. It's like, oh, okay. So this carries a lot of DNA.
Yeah. Yes, I would say this is a very strong Twin Peaks precursor.
Yeah.
Especially the first two seasons. The third season that came out 30 years later little different animal, kind of the same, but now this was definitely yeah, I like this movie a lot. Well, I liked it when I watched it in high school. I didn't understand why. It was just like, oh, this is suitable because I'm one of those people like um I'm not one of those guys like I'm going to delve into the philosophy about like, oh, this has to do with Jungian theory of like, psychology, and this is the id and the ego and the super ego, and this guy represents I don't do that. I'm just like, oh, I like the weirdness in this movie and the strange dialogue. And it's like, oh, it's like it starts out as a Scooby Doo mystery, and then Dennis Hopper shows up with a oxygen tank and a handgun. And it's like, oh, it gets really cool from there. But I don't have to like sit around and like, ooh, this means this and that means that. I know all that stuff and I could do it. But one of the things I appreciate about David Lynch is he doesn't pressure me to understand his work. He's like, yeah, it's whatever you think it is, which is what all those guys are doing. He just admits it.
Yeah.
Because everyone else like that, like that, what's that guy's, The Place Beyond the Pines, that William Rindig, or,
Oh, Wind and Refn.
Yeah, like those guys, like they almost want to like argue about like, no, it means this. Like, don't do that shit to me. Or like the namesake of this podcast. It's like always trying to shoehorn meaning into stuff. And it's like, well, yeah, that's kind of quirky and fun because he believes that. But David Lynch has almost admitted, like when he starts talking about his meditation and stuff, it's like, sometimes I film it and it happens. And it's like, it was in my subconscious, but I didn't mean to do this. And I was like, that's endearing because that's how I'm watching this movie too, David. So thank you.
Well, I mean, my Verhoeven Effect for the movie, and I think it's probably the obvious one, and again, you can interpret this however you want, is that there's something about, like, David Lynch really taps into the true heart of the Midwest. Mm-hmm. And that's what this movie is that it's all surface happiness and prosperity, but really it's just a cover for the darkness underneath, which is what the Midwest is.
Right. Lynch is essentially a Pennsylvania guy, born in Montana, but his dad lived like all over. And I think like he said, like Philadelphia is what inspired Eraserhead because he grew up there. So it's like a big industrial hellhole. This is like, see, I like this movie and movies like this because I've lived in suburbia for the last 25 years. And, just through no fault of my own, I've got to know some of my neighbors over the years and the lives they lead. And much like Kyle MacLachlan, I kind of walk through, like, I'm a little naive. Like, I see darkness and evil and everything, but I don't necessarily live in darkness and evil. So it's like kind of my magic talisman is like, I'm going to believe the worst things about my neighbors. And if it's true, like I'm protected from the evil. It's like, I have the secret knowledge. I know like, oh, she's like sleeping with this guy, or someone's getting handcuffed to a German Shepherd, or it's like, I know there's weird shit going on around me. And if I guess it before I find out about it, it's like, ooh, I'm shielded from the weirdness. Because I live in a suburb that literally like is like the back rooms of suburbs. Like it just goes on forever. It's like all the houses look the same, all the streets look the same, but it's like I know bad things are going on behind those doors. That's what I appreciate about this movie. This is really what suburban America is like. Only here we don't have quite the 50s vibe in this movie. But.
My highfalutin sentence I came up about this is that this is the pentiment of Americana being uncovered to see the darkness underneath. Which pentiment is a concept I only learned about from the video game Pentiment. Which, if you don't know what pentiment means, it means like, so if you're a painter, you can't just like erase it and start over again. So you just have to paint over top of it.
Okay.
So that's what like.
Did not know that. I learned something.
It's called pentiment. So much like a cover-up tattoo, where somebody, someone has to cover up a swastika so they make it look like a Windows 98 logo. So that's sort of what.
That's happened.
Sure, why not?
Oh, okay. I thought this was a story. Like, I knew a guy.
so like the concept of pentiment is actually more involved with like the Catholic Church and like them commissioning works of art for the church, and then like them becoming more prudish over time, and like, you know, we don't like this nudity and violence in these, and then they have painters paint over top of it. And then when
so like Winston Smith at the Ministry of Truth.
yeah,
He who controls the future controls the past, or at least paintbrush.
and then so like you would have people like that would go back in, like restore these paintings, and they would like uncover, it's like, this is pentiment, and they take it off and find the real painting underneath the original, and it's like, you know, fascinating. Anyway,
that's wild.
so there's a video game out there called Pentiment. It's on Game Pass, I believe, so you know, you can play it. So yeah, so that's, so I like that word pentiment, and so here that's I use the pentiment of Americana. So yeah, obviously this is directed by David Lynch. Cinematographer is Frederick Elms, who, this is pretty much the most famous thing he ever did.
Okay.
I looking at his filmography, it's not anything I really recognize.
What does a cinematographer for David Lynch do? Is that like, kind of get out of the way? And,
yeah, I don't know.
Paycheck, thanks.
Of course, this is written by David Lynch. Cast is Isabella Rossellini, Kyle MacLachlan, and Dennis Hopper.
And Laura Dern.
Yep. Yeah, staple.
Colonel Hottie, Laura Dern. Dean Stockwell, can't forget him. And who else was? Oh, Brad Dourif and Jack Nance.
Yeah. Jack Nance is the guy. Is it the? Oh, wait, who is it? Is he the guy that owns the lumberyard in Twin Peaks, or who is he?
Yeah, he's basically been in every David Lynch thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I believe he owns the lumberyard because he wears the same hat.
We get a Dino De Laurentiis production credit, so we know it's like, okay, this is but either going to be something great or stupid. So, and it can be whatever you want it to be. We get credits on a Blue Velvet Curtains, then we cut to a blue sky while Blue Velvet plays, like the original version, I believe. I'm not.
Yeah.
We get picturesque.
They were playing the Tony Bennett version as the original.
Okay.
But it's a song that's been covered by like all kinds of people.
Yeah. We get picturesque scenes of America. You get like a fire truck going by, and he's like smiling and waving at like, and you know, this is the tapestry that covers the violence of the Midwest. Then we have a guy who's watering the lawn with like some trouble, like the hose is getting kinked and wrapped up in something, and then he suddenly suffers like a stroke or something. We never learn, but it just seems like it would be a stroke. And then comically, like there's the dog. He's like hunched over. The thing's still spraying. A dog's like biting the water. A toddler appears out of nowhere, just wanders around. And then we cut to like, we zoom in on the blades of grass, and then there's like insects amongst the dirt, and there's just like, you hear like chewing, clawing, and just a general dissonance or whatever, if that's the right word.
Yeah.
Just a low, disconcerting rumble, which is something that will permeate this movie.
Yeah, discordant crunching sound.
Then we cut to like some radio advert for Lumberton, USA, which actually sounds like some kind of weird like horror film at first, because you have like the chainsaw sounds, but then it's like, welcome to Lumbertown, USA. So letting you know where we are, which I don't know if that's supposed to be if this is actually supposed to be like,
there is a Lumberton, North Carolina.
Oh, okay.
There's a real place. It's got 1,000 people in it.
Well, I mean, if you associate this with Twin Peaks, you'd assume it would be like in the Pacific Northwest, but hey, you know, it could be anywhere. But
no, it's in North Carolina.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying,
incredibly hot there.
I actually just don't know like where this movie explains where it takes place. I mean, that's the actual location, but I actually don't know where they shot it or anything like that. So.
Oh, I don't know where that's where they say they are. But then this movie kind of phases in and out of.
Oh, do they say the state? Or they say they're in North Carolina?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't remember that. Okay.
It does, yeah.
Oh, okay. I missed that. So okay. Well, that makes sense then.
He is. It's described to be in like it's in North Carolina, and I don't know where they shot it. I didn't see any palm trees in the background, but
I mean, they could always shot it in Canada during the
yeah.
during the warm months. Um, yeah, Jeffrey
Not
Beaumont.
Wilmington, North Carolina, and
Okay.
Lumberton. Okay, cool.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that works out then. Huh. That's interesting. I shot at North Carolina called Lumberton, and then they end up shooting in Seattle, or not Seattle, but Washington for Twin Peaks. At least I assume they shot it there. Maybe they went back to North Carolina. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what North Carolina would be. North Carolina is a place where they do shoot a lot of movies, but not like it's not like a new Hollywood or anything. And it's not they shoot way more stuff in Atlanta still, but North Carolina still gets stuff. I don't know if the friendly tax credits or whatever just appears now and again. That's why people go to North Carolina or what. But
yeah, there could be a lot of. I mean, it kind of looks like other places. So because North Carolina is like it's in the South, but it also is a coastal state. State. So you can shoot on beaches there, and I mean, the thing with like Georgia is it's like it's tax free. that's the kind of tax credit because we had that for a while.
Yeah.
And our next governor decided like, no, I want to build like, car parts plants where we pay everyone minimum wage. Like that's where the state money is going. And, of course, that guy just poisoned everyone in Flint and then left in disgrace.
We have Jeffrey Beaumont. It's played by Kyle MacLachlan. Who he's walking by like a dilapidated shed and like chucks a rock towards it.
Yeah.
Then we go to Jeffrey sees his father in the hospital. He's the stroke guy from the beginning. His father fails to communicate, but like exudes extreme sadness from not being able to communicate. So you can get that. He's like crying, like trying to talk to his son. It's like, and they make it all weird because he has like all kinds of medical equipment on. So it's like extra.
He's wearing a halo. He has a trach hole in his. That's like really. Yeah, it's a typical David Lynch, like shock weird.
Yeah. We cut back to him like walking away from the hospital. He's chucking more rocks at the sheds. While searching for rocks, he like finds a cut off human ear. Just randomly. So he puts that in a bag and walks away with it. And then we cut to Jeffrey goes to the police station looking for Detective Williams. So he shows him the ear. At first, it's like Detective Williams, like, you got an ear. That's kind of weird. Let me see it. It's like, yep, that's a human ear, and just rolls with it, like not surprised at all. It's like, well, you told me the truth, and I discovered you weren't lying. So let's continue forward.
Well, this is another thing I like about David Lynch movies, and it's my favorite kind of thing that happens in general is when weird stuff goes on and people are just like, yep. And they just continue talking about like, well, this is now a situation and this is how we're going to deal with it. But we're going to deliver the dialogue in the most straightforward, like, we're just having a conversation. You want a cup of coffee? That's a human ear. Okay. And there's that's a lot of David Lynch dialogue is that. It's like the dialogue's not the best part. It's the what's going on in the background. It's like, and people acting weird. And it's
always the mismatch of emotions, because then there'll be stuff where it's like everything calm and nothing weird is happening, and then people are freaking out and yelling and screaming. It's like, what's wrong? Oh, nothing.
Which I like, because that's kind of how I view most of life anyway. They don't pay attention except to the things that interest me. So when people start screaming and running in circles, a lot of times I'm like, huh? Because it's like I didn't have the whole build up to like why everyone is upset because I was like doing something else. I was lost in my own thoughts or something. So yeah, I always like that's my favorite kind of thing is when crazy stuff is happening and people are reacting to it either improperly or with complete like just lassitude. Like, huh? Wow. Well, that's a hell of a thing, isn't it? And like someone's on fire in the background. You ever see anything like that? Wow. Yeah. I love that. I don't know why I like those kind of scenes, but I do.
Yeah, I almost had a weird real life scene like that because I was working on something and one of my expensive tools seemed to have broken. And I was just kind of like, huh, oh well. And then the other guy's like, why aren't you screaming right now? It's like, well, that's not going to help anything.
Yeah, I kind of like I've been asked that before because sometimes I get mad about stuff and then sometimes I don't at all, and people are like, "Aren't you upset about that?" I was like, "Yeah, but it's like if I flap my arms like a chicken in my pants, does it like go away?" No. So it's like I guess it's like I'm just fucked. It's like yeah, I can be mad at it. Sometimes I do get really mad about things, like inconsequential things, but like big stuff will happen, and I'll be like, "Wow." I remember when an RV flipped over once when I was driving with someone, and I was like, "God damn, did you see that?" And I just kept driving. It's like, "Do you want to stop?" And it's like, "I guess I do what?" It's like that was weird because it was like it was coming straight. RVs are just like a brick with wheels on them, and it was coming straight at us, like turning through the intersection, and I was going this way, and it just like all of a sudden was on its side but kept moving. That's a hell of a thing. Like I could see the drive shaft spinning. Like that's really weird. Should we stop? Maybe it's like no, it's kind of busy out here. It's like, I don't think anyone got hurt. I don't know why the thing was on its side. It was just, suddenly it was this, and then it was that.
We're just gonna get in the way. The police and the rescue people need to get there.
Yeah, it's like I'm not like a qualified like emergency medical technician or anything. I'm not gonna know what to do. It's like help me. It's like tell me about your childhood. I mean, what do you want me to say?
Do you like David Lynch movies?
Yeah. Just sit down on the ground and it's like someone's like crawling towards me. It's like, so tell me, when your day started, you totally didn't imagine like this is how it would end, right? And this person just looking at me with like this blood running down the floor. I'm trying to be in the mood here. See, no one appreciates that. Like, I'd probably be arrested for acting that. You're under arrest for being a weirdo.
The 50s again.
Here we are.
So Detective Williams and Jeffrey go to the morgue to get the doctor's opinion. He's like, yep, that's a human ear. And he's like saying like, yeah, we can pull, sex and the time, whether it was severed off from a corpse or a live body. We'll determine all that.
That's really something, because Kyle McLaughlin's looking at him like, yeah, that's ridiculous. Owen's like, why's our fucking ear laying there? What does this mean?
Then they cut back to the shed and they have a police grid search going on. So basically we have like the plot of the movie is like, whose ear is this? So I have that being the end of Act 1. We have Act 2. We cut to night. Jeffrey's going out for a walk.
Yep.
Hey, it's Happy Gilmore's grandma. I forget. Yeah. She's there. Which at first I was like, hey, that's the log lady, but it's not the log lady.
No, that's can't think of the actress's name because she died right before they did season 3.
Yeah. Although that was like 4 people in that show.
Yeah, well, yeah.
It was her. It was Harry Dean Stanton, the guy,
the original
Garcia,
sheriff, right?
Yeah.
Or he does not come back.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure. They said he was sick in the show, but I'm not sure if that was. Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah.
And the guy, I can't remember his name's like Garcia something. He was like in RoboCop, and he was like an FBI agent in the show. Like that was his last performance too. Yeah, it was like 4 or 5 people that died on that production after.
Oh yeah, that was the young executive. Yeah, guy who invented RoboCop because it was competing with Ed 209 because the Ed 209 just incinerated that executive.
Yeah,
one of the best scenes in cinematic history.
We'll get there eventually.
Yeah, it's gonna happen.
We cut to a zoom in on the ear. We get darkness and ominous sounds as it goes into the ear canal and just starts becoming darkness. We cut back and Jeffrey talks with the Detective Williams. He says he can't give Jeffrey details on the case, but it's like your role in this is over, so I can't tell you anything more. So then Jeffrey leaves. There's also Sandy Williams, his daughter, is played by Lauren Dern, is mentioned, and we see a photo of her, but we haven't seen her yet. And then when Jeffrey goes outside, like Sandy just emerges from the darkness, like blonde hair
from the bushes or something.
She's got blonde hair and a pink dress. they kind of walk and catch up. It's weird because it's like not, I can't remember. Is this the part where there's like a heavy set guy with a small dog and like sunglasses, and he's just there?
Yep.
I don't know what that means, but you know,
it has something. Well, they're establishing like she's a senior in high school and Kyle's like a sophomore in college.
Yeah.
So it's kind of establishing like it's still kind of okay that they're in a relationship.
Yeah, especially back then.
Back then, they didn't worry about shit like that.
I mean, she was 21 in this movie, so it's fine. The reality of it. So,
I mean, Laura Dern is like super hot to me. She's like one of those women that like I don't usually like lust after women, but like her and Sigourney Weaver are like, oh yeah, these are my go-to. Like those are hot women to me. I don't know why, because a lot of people are like, oh, they're strange looking. It's like I don't think so.
Well, they both age
really
considerably well too.
You can like relate. You could imagine like having an intelligent conversation with the actual person, not the characters they play in movies. Like, oh, it would be interesting to talk to them.
Well, also, Laura Dern has an interesting vulnerability that I don't think a lot of women get to express. No, because she's associated with David Lynch, she gets to do whatever he or she wants. So.
Yeah, it's a weird like. David Lynch must be the best guy in the universe to work for, because think of all the people that have just always done David Lynch. Like, I don't know if he's the best guy to like if I was funding one of his movies to work with. As an actor, it's like it must be amazing because everyone keeps revolving back. It's like, I want to work with. It's kind of like the guy who did Breaking Bad. It's like, well, everyone wants to work with this guy. It's like, you know, probably because David Lynch is like all visual and he's not doing like, it's like a Stanley Kubrick. Like, we're going to shoot this 7,000 times.
Well, and also like, well, Kubrick is like, I'm going to direct, I'm going to cinematographer, I'm going to do electrical, I'm going to basically tell you exactly how you're going to act. Although sometimes I hear it's not. He just waited till they did something he thought was right. But David Lynch is like, everybody has their job. Like, I'm going to do my job and you do your job. I'm not going to interfere. And
even when acting, like when Marilyn Manson, my favorite David Lynch interview was like the Lost Highway scenes with Marilyn Manson, who was not an actor and was worried like, hey, did I do that wrong? Fuck it, we'll fix it in post. Scene. We'll fix it later. Don't worry about it. Marilyn Manson was really nervous, like, oh God, this is David Lynch. Like, David Lynch made Marilyn Manson nervous. He's the nicest guy in the world. Well, unless you're a pretentious film interviewer, I've heard there's some famous Lynch interviews you can watch on YouTube that went wrong.
Yeah.
What do your films mean? Why the fuck am I here? You really just asked me that? Did I just come out from under a rock? Do you know who I am? Well, no, I was just wanting to get fuck you. You know, it's like, wow, David Lynch could get really angry with people.
I mean, that was probably like his 100th interview for the day, because even though it seems like actors have cushy jobs and stuff, and it's like, well, I would love to get paid millions of dollars to pretend. There's
nothing cushy about making movies. It always seems like it's really hard work.
But nothing's worse than doing like the interview circuit, because it's like, I'm not sure if it's probably included in the contract, but essentially it's like, well, I got my paycheck, but I'm still on the hook for all this garbage to promote the movie.
Yeah.
Which
I don't think he minds like fans will ask him, like, just come up. I've seen these videos, like fans will ask him, so he's really cool. Yeah. I don't think he minds that, but I think it's like there's a level of pretension and like, I am an artiste stuff that really bugs him.
Yeah.
Which is like, oh, that's why I appreciate his movies, because like, it's like this only means what it means to you, the viewer. I don't care if you don't get this out of it, well, cool. That's like, you know, your problem.
But that's also like the same level of outrage that like Billy Bob Thornton would get every time he was like on the road with his band and people just want to talk about movies. And it's like, we agreed ahead of time, we're not going to talk about my movies, we're going to talk about the band, and then he just blows up on them.
Well, I like that about Billy Bob Thornton, because if I was just talking, because I also like Billy Bob Thornton's music, some of it, it's just kind of weird and fun. And it's like, yeah, if you're just talking about his, don't ask him about his movies. He doesn't want you to do that. I don't think he's being the dick there. It's like being aggressive with a guy who literally has a pile of fuck you money. It's like, why are you trying to piss this guy off? Because you know what he's going to do. He's not going to be like, oh, you're the one guy that's going to show me like, oh, the error of my ways. And I'm just going to talk about my movies, even though I got the whole band here working our asses off on this shit. You ever listen to Billy Bob Thornton music?
No.
It's actually kind of fun. You should do it. It's got like whole albums you can just download. When did I start? What was that movie that? What's it called? About the musician. It was a really sad movie. It's called Lost Heart, or I forget who was in it. The dude was in it. You know that guy.
Oh,
Jeff Bridges? No.
yeah, Jeff. Yeah, that's the dude. Is that like?
He was a country music singer. His name was like Bad Blake or something. He was one of these crazy country music guys. But he was so self-destructive, he never made it beyond B-levels celebrity status.
Yeah.
What's it called? Crazy Heart?
That might be it. Let's see where I am looking. Crazy Heart.
Okay. Yeah, listening to the music and that is where I discovered Billy Bob Thornton's like, country blues type music. And it's like, it's offbeat. But I enjoy it. Because Billy Bob Thornton's a kind of weirdo. It's like, I like that guy. I don't ever want to meet him or emulate him or anything. It's like, I like that guy. I like that guy's around. That's fun.
Don't meet your heroes and don't meet your weirdos.
No, I don't want to meet my heroes. I've been friends with literary heroes of mine online, and it's like, oh, I don't like these people. I just like their books. I don't want to know about them. And they don't want to know about me, so I can respect that.
Jeffrey and Sandy like catch up. I think they were like in high school or vaguely high school together. I mean,
yeah, he would have been a senior when she was a sophomore.
Okay. Jeffrey's home from school because his dad had a stroke or whatever, or it's just convenient that that happened at the same time. I'm not sure.
Unidentified medical condition is how the notes, all the research I did on this movie described it.
So, because, Sandy's in the same house as the Detective Williams, she has basically overheard every detail of the case that he did not tell her. And so she's going to tell him what's going on. And he's enticed by this. It's like, oh, good. Because, like, the detective is like, yeah, we don't need any private investigation here. Like, your role is done here. He's like, okay.
Which is what cops would actually tell you.
Yeah.
Like, thank you. Stop. We don't need the mystery machine driving around town.
So Sandy and Jeffrey go to the like a suspect's apartment on Lincoln Street. I believe it's on Lincoln Street. I'm not sure.
Yes, it is.
They kind of just hang out for a bit, and they're kind of like, "Hey, what should we do about this?" Then we cut to the next day. Jeffrey's working at the hardware store that his family owns. He's setting up a bug spray or something, and it ends up being bug spray. So I'm not sure he's putting in it though.
I hope it's not bug spray for his sake.
Well, he said it was a special formula that it doesn't smell, so I'm thinking it's just water. But I don't know. Yeah. He is mixing something.
Bug sprays are bug spray is a lethal poison. So,
Jeffrey picks up Sandy at school. I don't know, Nathan. Do you have what's this car?
I'm looking it up right now because I had the link saved, and then I don't know. Crapped out on me.
So they're starting their teen investigative adventure, although only one of them's a teen, but that's what's going on here. This is a lighthearted investigation, high school investigation. They hang out at the diner. Jeffrey lays out the plan to like sneak into the suspected lady's apartment, but here he lays out the plan that he's going to pose as like pest control, and then Sandy's going to pose as a Jehovah's Witness as a distraction so he can like crack a window. That's his plan.
Okay, the hero car is a 73 Delta 88 Royale convertible.
Oh, okay. Hey, the the Sam Raimi car is a Delta 88, but that's not a convertible.
Yeah. Oh, this one was only made for 2 years.
Oh, okay. We cut to the Deep River Apartments. This is where Jeffrey and Sandy are going to run the ruse. It's Dorothy Valens, who's played by Isabella Rossellini, who is a captivating and mysterious Italian woman.
Well, it was a muse for David Lynch during this time. I think they were in a relationship.
Okay.
By the time that, I don't know if it was when this movie ended filming or while it was going on, but they were a couple for a few years.
Well, also I didn't know because as Dino De Laurentiis, I was like, you got to put some Italian person in here, and this is the one David Lynch shows. I didn't know if that was going to be a thing here, but yeah. If he was forced to choose an Italian actress to put in the movie, he chose the best one. So.
Oh yeah, she's beautiful.
Well, and she just pulls off weird and disconcerting very well too. So, range of emotions with her. Very brave. Her character's Dorothy Valens. She lives on the 7th floor. The elevator is out of order, so he's got to go up the stairs, which is one of those weird things where it's like you have to go up. He has to go outside to almost like a different building to take stairs up to the apartment. I don't know how that stuff works out. Yeah, there's weird stuff like that. So it's probably an old building, and then they forced by codes like, well, people got to get out of here with a fire, and so then they got to build like a staircase on the outside of it. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. Isabella Rossellini was married to Martin Scorsese, and was let's see. I don't think she married. Yeah, she was married to Martin Scorsese and then Jonathan Wiederman, and she was with David Lynch and then Gary Oldman. Oh, that must be fascinating.
He gets to the apartment, he knocks, and Dorothy lets him in. There's like red carpets and red walls, and Dorothy.
Oh, this is the amazing, like one of the things I love about David Lynch movies, the great interiors. like apartment color schemes and apartment carpet schemes that would literally make you psychotic if you tried. I'm going to live in this in real life. It's like it's one of the things I love about David Lynch movies are the interiors. Like you would never, because I have my wife is really into like colors and interiors and stuff, and I've showed her David Lynch movies before and we've talked about it, and she's like, yeah, that would be insane to live in something like that dark. Like there's shadows in bright daylight, because of the way it's painted, the way the carpet is.
It's the cabinet of Dr. Caligari in here.
Oh, I've wanted to do this room. Like if I ever redid this room, it's like I either want to make it look like the interiors from the movie Stalker. I want to make my room look sepia in real life, or like a David Lynch, Mulholland Drive, like Lost Highway, or this, interior. And it's like, no, the answer is always a strong no. It's like, you'll commit suicide in that room, Nathan. It's crazy. So she might be on.
The Red Room's a thing in Twin Peaks, right?
Yes.
So is this the original Red Room?
Well, again, this was a Twin Peaks prototype film, so yeah, probably. This was Twin Peaks beta.
Well, I know Twin Peaks is a collective effort, so it's easy to associate all the good things about Twin Peaks with David Lynch, but it was a collective effort. There is a co-creator with that, but we know most of the magic comes from David Lynch. So.
Well, yeah, the Mark Frost part of that was like, I can get you the money to make it. And that's the hardest part of it, David Lynch. Like I said, if I imagine myself working with David Lynch as an actor, it's like, oh, I can deliver dialogue in a stilted, weird way and like maintain eye contact too long while someone is like burst into flames in the background. Like, that's cool. If I have to sell this to funders, it's like I'm going to have a nervous. No one's going for this, man. You can't sell Coke in this, but you can sell Heineken, Budweiser, and Pabst Blue Ribbon. Or not. I don't know.
There's a knock at the door. He's going to spray around in the kitchen. There's a knock at the door. This, you expect this to be Sandy running the distraction, but then someone unexpected in a yellow suit shows up.
Curious George's buddy shows up.
And then Jeffrey spots some keys and he just grabs them and then he leaves. uh, so Jeffrey
He
plans.
spots the keys though, hanging on a hook underneath a cabinet, like it that would be at waist level for most people.
Yeah.
It's like the weirdest place to keep keys ever, but it's like, oh, okay, I know what film am I watching? Okay,
That's one of those things you build it so like the audience will know it from a distance and
yeah,
but it doesn't actually make any sense. But because it's
no,
a David Lynch film, that's kind of like a built-in process. Like it doesn't have to make sense; it just has to be noticeable. Um. So Jeffrey goes. He's back outside. He was with Sandy. He's gonna plan to break in on Friday. Sandy says she has a date, but then Sandy says she's gonna stand up Mike, which is her boyfriend in high school, and he's like
yes.
football player, but we don't learn that till later. So in the meantime, they plan on going to the club where Dorothy sings at. So we cut to, is this called the Slow Club? Is that the name of it? Okay.
Slow Club.
Jeffrey and Sandy.
I'm sorry, Twin Peaks season 3. Think of that club.
Yeah.
It's like a club in this like hick, logging town that has like the best like alt rock acts from the 2000s and 2010s are playing at this club to a cast of or to an audience of 10.
The best performances you'd ever see.
Yeah, it's the guy's music you've never heard. I've heard of it, but
Jeffrey and Sandy are drinking Heineken.
You've got the Lord, it's like, yeah, you don't play that music in a small town.
I mean, yeah, it's like Blues Brothers last week.
Yeah.
They should be throwing beer bottles at them.
Exactly, yeah. They should be in Kokomo, Indiana. We play both country and Western music here. Little different at the David Lynch Club. But I would go.
We play sadness and other sadness.
Yeah. We can play sadness and dissociation all at the same time. Come on in. What the fuck?
Jeffrey and Sandy are drinking Heineken, so clearly no one checked IDs. Because presumably they're both underage. I mean, maybe Jeffrey could be 21, but if he's a sophomore in college, it's like he's either 20 or 21. I'm betting neither. So
Well, let me tell you, from growing up, like when I was like, when I was like 16 to 21 in the rural Midwest, like, you had to have, in the part of the Midwest I lived in, it's like, you had to have a runner or know someone's dad who would buy you booze or whatever. However, when like I moved to the big city and raised my son here around Detroit, it's like, you can get booze anytime, anywhere. Like, well, I'm glad that's working out for you, son. For me, it was more like the hero's journey. You had to like find people and make connections. It's like, you just had to join a fraternity, and it's like, yeah, he's with us. Go ahead, buy all you want. So yeah, when I see underage drinking like this, kind of from where I live now, it's like, absolutely that would happen.
Which it's probably why people become alcoholics and addicted to smoking, is because when they're young they went on an adventure to get alcohol and smoking.
That's exactly what happened to me. You're right. I don't smoke anymore, but I can't deny the fact that I still drink.
I was like, well, when I was, because I naively, it's like, I'm not supposed to drink, so I didn't. I'm not supposed to smoke, so I didn't. But like a bunch of my friends smoke and drink, even around me. Like, you want some? Like, no, I'm good. And they would tell me stories of the adventure of getting this. I remember one time they're on a phone with somebody trying to buy $100 worth of like weed, like a pound of weed, a brick of weed. He's like, "You want to get on in this?" I'm like, no.
For what purpose? For what is?
So yeah.
Yeah, but I never went much farther than cigarettes and booze. So. And really, I just like cigarettes and booze because it put me in like a frame of mind I enjoyed.
Yeah.
It wasn't to like establish anything. It's like, I just love nicotine and liquor. And but I had to give up nicotine because like the downside of that is really bad. Liquor, I'm still in the camp. I'm still on team booze, but That's because it seems like, because I live in a state where there's like legal weed for the last decade. I still have one of those lame-o jobs where I can't use weed because everyone else around me is like, hey, you want some edibles? You want some weed? It's like, no, I can't. It's like, why not? I get a drug test and they laugh at me like, what are you, an FBI agent, a cop? It's like, oh, I drive a forklift for a car company. It's like, oh, they still do that there? But all these guys I know, they use it there. It's like, yeah, they do, and they're risking their pension by doing it. It's like, there's a reason I don't do that stuff, and it's not because I'm a teetotaler. It's because I still have one of those dumbass jobs where it's like, oh, if you fail a drug test, like, goodbye. Kiss the last 20 years of your life, goodbye. But yeah, so I never got to. But the amount of intoxication and how it goes on like around here versus where I grew up in Indiana is like, oh, this is like Europe in Michigan. It's like, oh yeah, anything goes, whatever you want to do. Because I remember you used to you could get arrested. They would call it like like consuming, like minor consumption of alcohol or something. Like it was like it wasn't a felony, but it was like a bad misdemeanor to have as a person under the age of 21. Where here it's like, go home, just don't drive. They don't give a shit here. They don't care if you're drunk and you're 16 years old. It's like, as long as you're not driving a car, it's not our problem. Oh, that's a completely different attitude. But then you realize like, oh, no one here goes to church or believes in God or anything. It's like, yeah, if you've grown up and lived in the Metro Detroit area for the last 50 years, like you don't believe there's any salvation after this. So drink up because.
Well, because I've been in class the last year, and it's like I'm the old guy in the class. Actually, I wasn't. I was the next old guy. But anyways, it's like all these guys coming straight out of high school, and then like the teacher, because he's been teaching essentially kids just out of high school for the last 10 years. He's like. And people are talking about drinking stories when they're clearly not 21. He's hey, let me see your fake ID. And then like 3 people whip him out. It's like, yeah, I'm 21 in Minnesota, and I just have to remember my birth date on that card and stuff like that. That's all you need.
Yes, I remember someone close to me once, recently, well, with a couple of years, was like telling me like where they were in, Ann Arbor, which is like a city close to me, and it's like, oh yeah, we were there. And I was like, how were you there? It's like, oh, I'm this person from Ohio and this is my birthday. And they showed me a driver's license. I was like, that's gotta be a felony. Like, how did you get no, it's just, they were doing it here and it was only like $50. It's like, wow, okay. I said, please don't have that in your wallet. I said, do you realize like what to me, that's like, oh, if you have an identity that says you're someone else from another state, like that's got to be a felony or something. Like that can't be good. But it's like, no, it's just for drinking. I'm not getting car loans or something with it. Like, all right, I guess you know more about this world. I've become an old person now, where it's like, don't do that. That's bad. The book of Ecclesiastes says, like, okay, well, have fun. At least just don't drive drunk. That's my only thing. Don't drive drunk. Whatever else you want to do, great. Yeah. Anyway.
The MC comes out and he says, "Ladies and gentlemen, the Blue Lady, Miss Dorothy Valens." And then we have the Isabella Rossellini version of Blue Velvet, which is very sultry and sad.
She actually sings.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
And because they know, hey, that's Dorothy Valen. She's pretty good. We now know she's here. So let's take off and break into her apartment.
Yeah.
So they pull up to Dorothy's knowing she won't be there. Jeffrey's leaving the car with Sandy, and he tells her to take off. And then Sandy says she'll stay till Dorothy gets back and like honk the horn 4 times. Say like, yeah, they're coming in. Jeffrey goes up the door.
Where Heineken plays a role in the movie.
What's that?
Remember they were drinking Heineken.
Yeah.
And then he goes into the apartment.
Oh, yes.
Drank so much Heineken. He has to take a leak, and he doesn't hear the horn honking because when he flushes the toilet, it like takes 20 minutes for the tank to refill, and it sounds like a fire truck refilling it.
He also says out loud Heineken. So,
yep.
Almost as a product placement, even though it gets them in trouble. So.
Somebody said that like and I don't know. Again, this is like somebody like reading into David Lynch, like a, and it's like, oh, he resented the fact that he had to capitulate to certain things to get funding for this movie. So he did pseudo product placement with Heineken, Budweiser. You don't hear about the Budweiser unless you watch the extended version of this. But it's Heineken and Pabst Blue Ribbon, and everyone thinks like, oh, they got paid to put that in the movie, and I guess they didn't. But it was kind of like his middle finger to like having to commercialize his movies. I don't know if that's true or not, though. He's never said, so
Yeah.
that could be just like somebody's thought.
Yeah. Maybe he has a separation of church and state thing there because he does do commercials for big
Yeah,
companies.
he makes money doing cool commercials, or he did cool commercials too. He also does normal movies, but not at the time, not before this movie came out.
I mean, he's not really done like 2 normal movies.
Yeah, but they're kind of cool to watch. Like, this is a David Lynch movie.
All his movies are worth watching. I mean, I think like, oh, is it Straight Story? Is that the one where it's like the person with a tractor driving to meet their brother who's like had a heart attack? Like that one's not overtly weird. It's actually more of like a Disney movie, but it's just directed by David Lynch. But
yeah, but it's cool to watch.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a David Lynch movie. You go into it like, I want to see a David Lynch movie, and you're like, it's not a David Lynch movie, but it's like, this is still a really good movie. Which to me, like, oh, it proves he can do it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he can do it. He's just choosing to make Velvet and Dune and Elephant Man and Eraserhead.
Let's see here. Jeffrey's at the door. He's also like spying around to make sure nobody's around. Of course, you never see anybody in the hallway that's like that lives in this. It's only visitors are in this hallway.
Yeah.
He knocks at the door to make sure like nobody's in there. He tries one of the keys, but then like it doesn't work. One of the keys doesn't work, but the other key does. So who knows what that other key's to? That's for your imagination. Unless there's 2 locks in the door, I don't know. He lurks around the apartment in the dark. And here he goes to take a piss, and then he says Heineken, and like, yeah, like Nathan just said, the flushing covers up the noise of Sandy honking the horn. The light switch turns on, and then Jeffrey's like in the middle of like the living room, but there's kind of like a corner, so the door doesn't directly show. You can't see anybody directly from the door. It's like a little hallway that's like blocking vision of the living room.
Yeah.
So he has time to dart for the closet and hides in there. He can like, the closet has like kind of slits so he can see through the blinds kind of, which is a common thing in movies. I don't know if this is that had to be a Hitchcock or something, but like the hiding in the closet, looking through the slits in the closet door. That's like a very common thing in movies. I don't know if it started here, if that was just a thing. It's also a lot of music videos and too. So
yeah, it's kind of like Rear Window without like it's more like it's voyeuristic, but it's because the thing with this movie is like, oh, is the Kyle MacLachlan character a pervert or a hero? Like, you don't know. You know what you want to be, but
So yeah, she gets in the apartment and she like undresses into her underwear. The phone rings. We hear it's Frank is on the other end, but we don't know who Frank is yet. And we can kind of construe that like he maybe kidnapped her child.
Yeah.
She like writhes around and then she like just like kind of like sits up and takes her wig off. So that's also just weird and disconcerting. It's like, wasn't expecting that. It's like, then she's kind of like off in the corner. She gets naked. And then she grabs a blue robe out of the closet that Jeffrey's in. So he kind of just like hides in the corner of the closet and she doesn't see him. But then when she sits on the couch, she hears a noise and then she goes and grabs a knife. She opens the closet and then she holds up Jeffrey with a knife. She turns the tables and makes him get undressed so she can watch him get undressed. She pulls his underwear down. She's like starts kissing around his crotch, saying not to look or touch her. They go to the couch and they're like making out a bit. This is all very weird, but like,
yeah, there's nothing sexy about this, which is why I like this. because because most weirdos would be like, "Ooh, this is hot," but it's like, oh, this is desperate.
Yeah.
This is like all based out of fear.
And nobody's in the right here.
No, nobody's right. Everyone's wrong. He's wrong. She's wrong.
There's a knock at the door, and she shoves him back in the closet. There's where Frank is Frank Booth, I think is his name.
Yeah.
It's played by Dennis Hopper. He shows up and he's like, "Hello, baby," or no, she says, "Hello, baby," and he's like, gets mad. And it's like, "It's Daddy, and where's my fucking bourbon?" So she gets some bourbon.
Yeah, let's talk about Frank Booth for a minute, because he's like my favorite character in this movie, because he seems to be like, what would I call him? The embodiment of like vulgarity and stupidity.
Yeah.
Like, because he's like, well, not stupidity. It's like he's the embodiment of vulgarity and this like out of control violence.
He's
like,
bold vulgarity.
Yeah, because he doesn't really have like.
He's confident with no skills.
Yeah, this is Dennis Hopper performance, so it's always turned up to 11. That's what you get with Dennis Hopper, regardless of whatever script you write for Dennis Hopper. It's always going to be Dennis Hopper, which is cool. I like Dennis Hopper roles, but it's like this guy is like, this is the weirdest Dennis Hopper ever.
Frank sits down on the couch drinking his bourbon, and she's sitting in a chair, and he commands her to spread her legs and like, "Show it to me." Then he tells her not to look at him. So this is where he realized, oh, this is what he does to her. So that's why she was doing the weird stuff to Jeffrey. Yeah. It's like, oh, okay. So this
is like a sex victim or something. What would
Yeah.
you call that? An abuse victim or yeah.
Which I actually learned that you know the term trauma bonding.
No.
Oh, okay.
That sounds dark and weird. What's trauma bonding?
Well, what I would immediately interpret it as, it sounds like something. It's like, you know, like bonding. It's like a shared experience. So it's like, it seems like something. It's like, oh, we both experienced a trauma, and so we bonded over it, and we had it. But that's actually not what it means. It's basically just when someone is abused by somebody, and then they kind of lose all self-confidence, and they basically demand to be told everything, and they get their satisfaction from their abuser, and that's what trauma bonding is. Like they have to get all
weird. Okay,
yeah.
That's exactly what this is. Then what you described.
Yeah. So yeah, but like on its surface, it sounds like oh, we shared a horrible experience together, but no, it's just an abusive relationship where people.
It was a horrible experience instigated by one of the two people involved. It's like
there's not equals here. It's an unequal relationship, and yeah, they demand basically satisfaction or any kind of they can only do things if their abuser tells them to do that. So yeah, it's abuse. What they call it, abusive relationships.
Yeah.
Here's where like Frank starts huffing the oxygen tank from a mask, and the tank is like on his hip, which we didn't see. So this gets extra weird. It's just like the whole
like No Country for Old Men before it happened. Only he's not using a cattle gun. He's inhaling. According to Dennis Hopper on the commentary, it was amyl nitrate.
Oh, okay.
But in the movie, it's never said what it is.
Oh, I thought it was just oxygen or whatever, but okay.
It's some kind of 70s drug. Like amyl nitrate was something. It was called Rush in the 70s. It was something you inhaled, like you broke those capsules, and you know the things that wake you up if you get punched in the face and you're unconscious.
Smelling salts.
Yeah. Okay. So it was something like it was delivered that way, but it was something that really got you like up. Like, you know, like your heart would just be jacked, like kind of like cocaine or something, but it was a gas. So your heart would just be like your eyes would like wobble. Your heart would be pounding so hard. So, but that's what Dennis Hopper said it was. It's unidentified in the movie. It's not, you know. When I watched this movie, I thought, oh, is this guy a smoker and has some kind of like oxygen thing that he has to do when before he goes crazy because he needs the extra oxygen, but according to Dennis Hopper, it was amyl nitrate.
Well, it's just a really interesting like character operation. Like we need to do this, and it's just like very identifiable. Yeah.
I think of Bane in like the later, and then like was it Batman?
Yeah.
What is it? Batman
Dark.
Rises or
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah,
Dark Knight
Dark Knight
Rises?
Rising. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like this was Bane before it was cool.
But here he like his attitude changed. He starts saying "mommy," and then we have the famous line of "baby wants to fuck."
Well, there's two like distinct personas here. There's Baby and Daddy. Because Daddy wants the bourbon, and it's like, call me Daddy, and it's like, show it to me, and he's talking about her genitals, and like, that's Daddy, and then it's Baby, and then like Baby wants to fuck, and it's like a ritual rape, but there's no actual sex, because we're assuming like Frank can't actually have sex for some, probably because he's jamming amyl nitrate, but it's violent and hitting. It's like, don't look in my eyes, but it's done at that Dennis Hopper level of like, this is scary.
And also, like,
if you actually met a guy like this, you'd be like, "Oh, get me the fuck away from this guy."
Well, he's also like saying "mommy" is like, is she supposed to be playing mommy? Is there some weird incest angle here? And it's all up for you to decide.
Yeah, it's up to you. No, this guy's nuts. I mean, the problem is this guy's. I mean, ultimately, this is what Nathan gets out of it. This guy's a psychopath, and like a lot of psychopaths, they don't really feel emotions the way the rest of us do. So everything has to be extreme. It's like in the most extreme version, he would strangle her to death and then through her death feel like some kind of emotion. But in this case, because he's not the most extreme kind of psychopath, he's just happy to abuse her and do role playing. But yeah, this is a guy who can't feel anything. And so he's hampered as a human being, which makes him even more dangerous because he's got guns, he leads a gang, he's a drug dealer. He's the insects under the ground scene. This is the underworld. In Lumberton, North Carolina, population 19,000.
In a live band before. He hits her when she looks at him. He tries to say baby wants blue velvet, and so she has the blue velvet robe, and she stuffs the bit of the robe in his mouth. Then he throws her down, and he like starts snipping scissors at her. And there was like the coroner said something like, "Oh, the ear was snipped off with scissors." So it was like, "Oh, yeah. These are the scissors that cut the ear off." And then there's some dry humping, more hitting for looking at him. And then Frank leaves and says something like, "Do it for Van Gogh," which I'm guessing, because he cut the ear off. That's like the reference for that. So
yeah, that's what I got out of
that. Jeffrey comes out of the closet to like console Dorothy because he's never fucking seen anything like this.
No, I mean, I haven't seen anything like this in 2023. So in 1986 is like, oh, this is crazy.
She has very conflicted feelings, and so she asks to be held, and then she demands to be hit, but Jeffrey refuses, and then he gets dressed. He says he's leaving, but then she's like whispering, "Don't," and "help me."
Yeah.
Which is, disconcerting and weird. Like, what do I do with this? And then, earlier she grabbed a photo underneath the couch, and so he goes and grabs it and looks at it. It's a picture of her kid. There's like a marriage certificate. I think it says Donald Watts. That's her husband.
Yeah.
And then Jeffrey has like a skewed recollection of everything that just happened. Like literally, like there's like weird framing and like stuff on the screen, and it's like slanted and stuff like that. And then we cut to Jeffrey meets with Sandy in his car. As they park it in front of a church, so this is like a drive-through confessional. Jeffrey explains Dorothy's dire situation, and he's just like, "It's a strange world,"
which like comes up from that point on more often in the movie.
And then we cut to Jeffrey goes to see Dorothy again to see if he can help. But he's also like seeking sex because because Sandy basically vaguely rebuked him. Is like, yeah, I'm gonna go hang out with Mike. He's my actual boyfriend. You're not. You're not. That. So now Jeffrey's like, well, I get sex from this like absolutely wounded lady, and it's like that's where it's like I had this idea where it's like, oh, is like Jeffrey an incel? Is that he's like, I opened the door for you. Where's my blowjob?
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of weird. It was like Jeffrey, a total innocent, now is like, oh, he's in the underworld.
Yeah.
It's like if this continues in a year from now, Jeffrey's going to be like hitting a tank like baby wants to fuck. Like, what happened, Jeffrey?
He did it all for sex, like sex for everything. I'll ignore everything.
Is explained by the what is it? The ego and the id. Like the id is the darkness. That's Frank Booth, and Jeffrey becomes the darkness of the. I'm doing pretentious film talk now, but that's yeah.
But it's all brought about by his desire for sex, which presumably would, like, I don't know, would you say Jeffrey's a virgin? Maybe. Would that make it weirder?
Because I've seen like the extra. This movie was originally 4 hours.
Okay.
And the DVD I have was came out in 2016 with a bunch of extra scenes. He had a college girlfriend that dumped him before he went back to town.
Okay.
You're not going to know that from watching the standard edition. But yeah. That's he's not a virgin.
But sex is very important to him, and he's doing crazy things because it's like essentially he's going here. It's like, can I help the lady? And she's like, yeah, you can help me. It's like, can I get some sex? And she's like, yeah. It's not constructive. That's not helping anything. It's just he thinks like, well, she's allowing this, so it's okay. But no, he's actually hurting the victim that he's trying to help while doing this. So. But he's naive, innocent, so he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. He's not involving authorities like he did because everything before this, he's doing the right thing. They told him like, and now it's up to the police, and the police say like, even like he says like, this is a fascinating job, isn't it? And then he's like, yeah, but it's also terrible.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, my experience with this is like, as far as like psychosexual relationships between men and women is like limited and normal. So when I try to put myself as like a almost 50-year-old man in like this guy's shoes, it's like, oh, I just run out of the room screaming. Much like the jokes I made earlier about like, oh, if anyone suggested a threesome to me even at this point in my life, I'd be like, because it would seem so bizarre and like hopeless and desperate to me. It's like, yeah, all the stuff between him and Isabella Rossellini, it seems like, to me as an older guy, I could see like as a 20-year-old man, it's like, ooh, this is fascinating.
Yeah.
But to me as an older guy, it's like, oh, run away. There is something so wrong here. You've seen it.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, hit me. It's like, oh, whoa, no, we're not doing this because to me, nothing good. Like that doesn't sound good to me. But it's also like, I'm not an abused person either, so I don't have that mentality. Whereas if like someone suggested that like, oh, hit me during sex, I would probably laugh out loud like, what, are you kidding? But to them it would be like real serious because like, oh, this means something, which is like, that's the sadness and the horror of abused people. It's like, no, it would mean something to her, something important, like because she smiles like, yeah, this is how I know you care. And it's like, that's crazy. And I've known people that are in relationships not quite that on the nose, but it's like, oh, he doesn't, when he yells at me and screams and throws dinner against the wall, that's how I know he really cares. It's like, whoa, that doesn't, there's nothing caring about that. That's just evil. But, that goes back to his childhood. Can I tell you about his childhood? It's like, what are you talking about? No, I just need to, in my own shallow way, need to know this guy cares about me. And it's just like, this is why I don't have friends, because everyone's nuts. But yeah, so this movie, it's like very relatable and very weird at the same time.
Oh, the key word to trauma bonding I was forgetting is validation. They seek validation from their abuser. So that's the only way they can get validation is from their abuser. So.
Yeah.
And here she's trying to create a new Frank that she can control.
Yeah, it's an S&M Frank that like she turns the tables.
They cut to the Slow Club. Dorothy's singing Blue Velvet again. Jeffrey spots Frank in the crowd, and Frank looks like a normal person here. Like he's got like he's he's not in like his he doesn't have like his leather coat and stuff. He's just got like a flannel shirt on, and he seems weird. And then they reveal the lock of blue velvet from her robe, and that's when it's like, okay, he's still a weirdo.
Yeah, he's like holding it and like rubbing it, kind of something. It's like it's weird. Yeah, yeah. But he's also bathed in a blue light,
Yeah.
and he's looking at her like, Dennis Hopper's a nut. So
but he almost has like more innocent eyes in the scene. That's why I'd like say he like almost looks normal because
yeah, I mean that's the scary thing about Frank Booth is like you feel sorry for him at the same time as like, oh, this guy's scary. Like I don't like this guy, and I also feel sorry for him.
Oh yeah, maybe I didn't explain it. So we need to know this detail, but like in the first scene with Frank, he like dry humps her to some sort of completion or whatever before he leaves, but he doesn't actually like there's no penetrative sex or anything like that. But it's everything, but it's just his worst. So
yeah, it's just weird. Yeah.
Frank and his cronies take off in a muscle car, which is a Dodge Charger.
Yeah. 68 Dodge Charger.
Okay. Jeffrey follows them to some like industrial part of the city. It's Frank Booth. That's where he learned his full name. It cuts to morning. Jeffrey like staked out Frank's place. Like literally just hung out in the car the whole time. How do we? Oh man, I think this is later. All right. Jeffrey picks up Sandy. She's like, wait, keep going, because her boyfriend Mike is like having football practice nearby and he can see them. But then he's like, oh, never mind. And then she takes off with Jeffrey, and then you see Mike like distraught, like Sandy, like why? Because even though they haven't like done anything yet, it's like clearly we know this where this is going. They go to Arlene's diner again. They talk about he tells her about the case. This is where we cut to like him completing the stakeout. He has like some sort of like shoebox camera for like clandestine evidence gathering, where he has like a weird string, and it's like completely unnecessary, but I guess he's not literally holding a camera up taking pictures, but it's just
like
as weird,
moving like in a weird way, like
yeah,
pull the shutter back or pull the lens cover back and then click the shutter, and it's like, yeah, that's kind of weirdly that's another weird thing that's going on.
Just a weird specific. It's like,
yeah.
There was a drug dealer that was shot to death, and there's some lady who's like has like a mangled leg on the ground, like it's turned backwards or whatever. It's
like this is like a Family Guy fall down the stairs lady. It's apparently she got thrown out of the window or jumped out of the window during the shootout. But see, none of the really like violence, like criminal violence in this movie it's always like after the fact, or it's shown intermittently. And it's like, oh, it has no relation to anything else going on.
Yeah.
So,
here Jeffrey kisses Sandy. She kind of takes it indifferently, and then she's like okay with it, but then she's also like, moving on. Like, let's get back to the investigation.
I was so sad if I kissed Laura Dern and that's how she reacted.
We cut to night. Jeffrey goes back to Dorothy's apartment. He's looking for sex again. There's an ominous window with like red curtains.
Yep. You don't know if Frank's behind those curtains.
They're having sex, and she's asking for him to hurt her, but he refuses. And he says that like she should go to the police, and then here she flips out, and now Jeffrey like slaps and backhands her, and like this is to her delight.
Yeah.
Are they cutting into her teeth because now it's chipped or something like that, or is that just how her teeth are?
That's just how her teeth are, I think.
Okay.
It's just to show that she has like this toothy smile, like, yeah, he does care. I can love this man, which is like really disturbing and weird. 'Cause he's like slapped her. It's like, whoa.
Yeah. Jeffrey leaves the apartment. Frank and his gang see Jeffrey leaving, so Frank interrogates. Frank wants him to take a ride with them. We cut to Frank's Dodge Charger. Everybody's crammed in the Charger. There's like 8 people in this Charger.
Yeah, that would be like a hideous ride.
Including Dorothy in her blue robe. Brad Dourif is one of the gang. He's the guy with the knife. If you don't know, Brad Dourif's another weird. He was in Dune as well, wasn't he?
Yes, he was Thufir Howell, or no, Piter de Vries.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he's also probably most famous for being the voice of Chucky, I believe.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Frank has a police scanner that'll be he's like, well, he's a bad guy, so he's keeping tabs on the cops because he's doing illegal stuff all the time.
Yep.
They stop at some weird bar because it looks like the outside of a bar, but the inside looks like a house. But like if a house was designed after like a waiting room for a dentist, a dentist waiting room. Here's Dean Stockwell, from Quantum
Yeah,
Leap.
it's basically like it's like a weird house, and it's like a kind of effeminate man. I'm just gonna say effeminate because it's Suave Ben, or at least that's what Frank Booth calls him. But it's a bunch of like fat women.
Yeah.
Like unattractive women. It's like, what is this place? It's like a bunch of fat ladies, and one lady is like texting on her phone all the time, but she's not because it's 1986. So I guess she's looking at her hands because there's someone sitting there doing this all the time. It's like, is she texting? What's she doing? Because in modern terms, she would be, but
she's reading the dialogue her character doesn't have on her that she wrote on her hands.
So we assume these people are like freaked out on drugs, and they're dressed like fat lunch ladies from the 50s.
Yeah.
And then Ben is there with makeup on.
Yeah, he has like mascara and like kind of a light red lipstick or something.
Yeah.
Or a lipstick that's been kissed off a few times.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's just weird. It's just like,
I think we're supposed to read that as like he's gay. I have no idea what the temperament would be at the time.
He's Suave Ben. What I get.
But he's like, but it's a counterpoint to Frank, who's all wild and stuff, and Ben is just very calm.
Very calm.
But he's also the guy distributing drugs, so
he's a smart drug dealer. It's like, don't go crazy.
Frank punches Jeffrey, he pisses him off for just being there essentially. And then Ben quietly walks over and kind of consoles Jeffrey for a moment, and then punches him in the stomach as well.
Yeah.
So now you know that Ben's not going to be any help either. And this is also where like Frank just says, "Let Tits see her kid." Tits referring to Dorothy, so just reducing her to a sexual object. So. All these lunch ladies are basically like. They're the muscle holding the kid hostage and the husband hostage in some room that we don't see.
Well, and one of them is supposed to bring glasses for the beer because Frank can't stand it when the beer is warm.
Yeah.
And he's talking about this like at top volume, like he's shouting in people's faces. And then him and Suave Ben go into a side room while Tits is seeing her kid, and Suave Ben like throws a pill in his mouth, into Frank's mouth, and then Frank takes it, and then the glasses appear, and they pour Pabst Blue Ribbon in them, and they're drinking the beer, and then Dean Stockwell does a lip sync of Roy Orbison's "In Dreams" into a service lamp used to use to work on cars, which is actually a really cool scene for some weird reason. Yeah. Only because Frank starts crying while Ben is doing this, kind of weird, effeminate lip syncing of a Roy Orbison song.
Oh, that's also where I have was it Jack Nance does his weird things, like he's analyzing Jeffrey like an animal looking at something it doesn't understand. He goes, "I'm Paul." I think that's what it is. He
says that like 3 times.
Yeah.
It's like, but it's almost like I am Groot, but he's saying it like for a different reaction. I'm Paul. I'm Paul. I'm Paul. Like he doesn't know. He says it a different way 3 times.
But how progressive of Frank to hire the neurodivergent for his drug crew. So.
I think it's great. I mean, if I was going to become a full-on drug dealer, it's like, yeah, I would hang out with an effeminate guy who would lip sync Roy Orbison songs into a service lamp, because it's like, I'm safe with this guy. This guy will never betray me. He's just simply too weird.
I also Ben has like one of those long cigarette holders too. So
Yes, and in that way, he's like Hunter S. Thompson.
Let's see. Yeah, Frank gets boiled up with rage for some reason, and then he makes the crew hit the road.
Well, yeah, because he's crying because of the Roy Orbison song. And then he does this, this is later in Lost Highway. We see a lot of this. He's like, because remember, Frank says fuck constantly.
Yeah.
Calls people fuck. He's like, what are you looking at, you fucking fuck? Because he's just vulgarity incarnate. And he's like, I'm ready. Let's go for a ride. I'll fuck anything that moves. Who wants to fuck? And he's just yelling it, and then he just disappears off the screen. But
yeah,
the room's still there. It's
he's there, and they basically cut to an empty frame in the room, so he just like disappears for a moment.
Which happens in Lost Highway like 15 times. So it's like, oh, okay.
Again, that's up to you. Is that a mistake? Is that a filmmaker mistake? Or does that mean something? And that's up for you to decide.
Well, Lost Highway has my favorite riddle in it, which I tell my boss at work about the guy in the cowboy hat. And I'll tell him, it's like, well, do you need anything else, Nathan? It's like, if you see me once, everything worked out fine. If you see me twice, you failed. I just drive away. I don't understand, listeners. I'm on this big giant forklift, and I'm just like, it's like, hope I don't see him again. So, yeah, I leave people with that.
Frank drives around dangerously. He pulls over and yells at Jeffrey. Frank takes his hit of oxygen or animal nitrate, and he's like, "You're like me," to Jeffrey. Frank just like molests Dorothy here. Jeffrey says to stop that, and then he punches Frank, it's like he's
weird because Frank's like, oh, all your gang buddies are there holding this guy back, but he can clearly throw a punch from the back seat of a '68 Charger. Like,
how dare he?
He's not bleeding or anything, so it's like, oh, it's just annoying. That's called a nuisance punch.
Yeah, probably the first time he's ever punched somebody. So.
Yeah, it's not a good one.
Aim for the chin.
Yeah. It's like a Nathan punch. I don't punch people in the face often. I've done it before in my life. Never been really effective. I always end up with like, no one's stunned and like, don't hit me again. It's like, oh, someone's on my back now, and I'm like trying to get them off. And then I'm running out of the house like, that didn't work out. I'm sorry. It's like, are you sorry you hit me? It's like, no, I'm sorry my experiment didn't work, but my punching experiment.
They take Jeffrey out of the car, and Frank puts on some lipstick and kisses Jeffrey on the face, and then In Dream starts playing again, and then some random lady is dancing on the roof of the car.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing that's cool about this scene is like, she's one of the gals in the back that I guess came from Suave Ben's place. I don't know.
Yeah, because the Brad Dourif character is like, hey, you want to get out of here? And she goes with them.
Yeah, and she's like the most horse-faced, like, ugly looking woman. It's like good on this movie. That's what most real prostitutes look like. Anyone who doesn't know, it's not Pretty Woman with Julia Roberts. That's not what most prostitutes look like. They really look like the chicks in Blue Velvet. So young men, take that for what it's worth and don't do it. So yeah, she starts dancing on the roof, but not to the music, just in a discordant, like weird, like I'm on drugs and I'm dancing on a cloth top car, which is kind of weird, but yeah.
Frank recites the lyrics and beats up Jeffrey, and then we cut to darkness. Yep. Jeffrey wakes up the next day, like just abandoned in this like industrial place or lumber yard. Where he's beaten.
Lumberton, where men are men and don't wear women's clothing. Lumberton. I don't know what they say.
We cut to Jeffrey sits up in bed and he weeps, and he's like having memories of hitting Dorothy and the whole dire situation with their son. So now he's basically realized like, oh, I've done bad things. I'm in a bad place and nothing is going right, and I don't know how to fix it.
Yeah.
So that's the end of Act 2. We have Act 3. Jeffrey talks with Sandy on the phone. She wants him to tell everything to her father. Um, so Jeffrey has breakfast and he tells the ladies there like he doesn't want to talk
That's
about his
his mom
bruises.
and his aunt, by the way.
Oh, okay.
So Jeffrey and there are two like innocent old ladies like, oh, what happened? He's like, I don't want to talk about it. And then the one lady, what's her name? Dolores? His aunt. What's her name? Because she's been in a lot. Aunt Barbara. Frances Bay is the actress.
Okay.
Yeah. She's like, Aunt Barbara, I don't want to talk about it. This is the last time I'm going to say it. And like, he looks like he's been like, just beat up really good.
Yeah.
Like shiner, swollen jaw. Like, yeah, it's not been a good night.
And then Jeffrey goes to the police station to hand over evidence, but he spots that Gordon, the yellow suit guy, is a cop and decides against it. So it's like, wait, there's a whole conspiracy here. The cops are in on it. But then Jeffrey goes to Detective Williams' house to show him the evidence personally. So he doesn't want to, he wants to keep, because he doesn't know who to tell. So Detective Williams is the only one he trusted. Here, Sandy feels really guilty for getting him to she got him into the whole situation, so she feels guilty about that. But she hasn't experienced all this weird shit so far. So
Yeah. She doesn't exactly know everything that's going on either.
Yeah, she just knows it's bad.
Yeah.
We have Jeffrey watering the lawn in sunglasses, and then he has another hospital visit with his father. It's night and the cops are at the Williams house, or at least there's just a cop car out front with the light going on.
Yeah, with the light like going full and the siren too, remember?
Yeah. Would you think like, oh, did something happen at the Williams? Like, no. Not yet.
Running the siren.
And actually it's like it's date night for Sandy and Jeffrey, so now they're an item. Then I wrote Tom here. Yeah, the yellow suit guy, the crooked cop, shows up. He kind of looks in for a moment. He's, I don't know, presumably he's Detective Williams' partner, but we don't know. I mean, I don't know how the police department here works.
No, they say it's his partner later.
Oh, okay. Jeffrey and Sandy go to like a house party, at least I think. I've never been to a house party. It looked like a house and there was a party going on, so I assume that's what's going here. They dance to Julie Cruz's Love Letters, which I don't know her. Well, her most famous name is Twin Peaks, so that's what she does the lyrics for the theme for Twin Peaks. I mean, I know mostly you don't hear the lyrics for the Twin Peaks song, but yeah, she does, and she does a bunch of other stuff for David Lynch movies. So,
oh, real quick though, Angelo, I don't know how to do this name. Badalamenti? Yeah, the same guy who did like the famous, Twin Peaks, like the guy who did everything that's when you hear it about Twin Peaks, also did the soundtrack for this.
That thing?
Yeah, I knew what it was right away. That thing. So he also did the soundtrack for this, which is a lot more subtle than Twin Peaks. But if you just go to the soundtrack for Blue Velvet and listen to it, it's like, oh, it's a pretty effective soundtrack because you immediately recall it as you're listening to it.
But there's also stuff with this song, like it's like the things that are lyrically in the song, he's like David Lynch is just putting on screen, so it's like practically a music video inside of his movie, which I love. I know sometimes that's a crutch, but I love that stuff.
Yeah, I mean it's cool. Just like I like weird things happen and people acting normally. It's like, yeah, it's like that's not necessarily the best movie device, but I love it.
So they're dancing, they kiss. It's like kind of sad actually, because they're like realizing like the sadness that surrounds their entire relationship.
Yeah, this is about the loss of innocence.
They say "I love you" to each other, but it's like I don't think everyone knows. I don't think everyone's on the same track here.
Yeah, because you wonder if Kyle MacLachlan's next thing is going to be like, "Baby wants to fuck."
Well, because she's quick to say it, and he's like has to think about it.
Yeah, she's like, "I love you," and he's like, "I love You, I love you.
They leave the party and they think they're being chased by Frank. There's a really cool hubcap flying off thing here, because the hubcap flies off and then like it hits the curb and flies out of camera and then falls back into camera frame. It's like, that's magic. He can never intentionally do that.
Yeah, which makes you wonder, like, it's like, yeah, David Lynch was like, keep it. It's great. We'll fix it in post.
But this ends up being Mike, the football player, ex-boyfriend of Sandy's. They're like, look,
ready to fight,
and he's got some football guys with him. Yeah, so drunk driving, they're going to fight people, and then just out of nowhere, yeah, they're in front of Jeffrey's. I think it's Jeffrey's house.
Yeah.
And a naked and beat up zombie-looking Dorothy shows up out of nowhere. It's like,
yeah,
and it just like, you know, ruin the scene's the wrong word, but like obviously like Mike is caught off guard. Is like, he's like, what's this, your mom? And then he's like suddenly like oh wait, this got weird.
Like, hey, I'm really sorry. Don't know why he feels that way. It's just all of a sudden he's like, hey, whatever weird shit you got going on, I'm super sorry that this naked Italian lady who looks like she's been like put through a blender, whatever's going on, I'm sorry. Which was a weird like character change. I don't know.
Yeah. And then Jeffrey grabs Dorothy and puts her in the car, but he's like kind of hugging her to like block the nudity essentially. And then like, of course, Sandy is caught off guard by this because she knows like, well, this is super weird, but she also can spot like, oh, they had some sort of sexual relationship or something or whatever. So,
yeah, chicks always know.
They go to the Williams home and call an ambulance. Dorothy is saying that they hurt him, presumably either their husband or probably her child. I presume it's meaning more of her son. She calls Jeffrey her secret lover, and then Sandy's immediately distraught by this. Also, like Dorothy says, he put his disease in me.
Yeah, that's really weird. Is that like an 80s AIDS talk or something?
Well, I don't know. It's like, does she mean Frank? But I think she means Jeffrey. It's like, well, what does that mean?
That earlier too. She's like, you put your disease in me. Like, nothing sexy about that.
And this were like, basically Laura Dern does like her like ugly cry face thing that like only she like almost only does in David Lynch movies because it's just weird. It's like her mouth opens as wide as it can, her lips fold back, and just like half her teeth are showing. It's very awkward and weird, but it's like Laura Dern does it perfectly.
Yeah. He did that in Inland Empire a couple times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think she does it in Twin Peaks as well at some point.
Okay.
She does it a lot.
Yeah, she didn't do it in the Star Wars movie, but
again, she mostly does it for David Lynch. So.
Well, that's where her heart really lies.
Yeah. Dorothy begs Jeffrey to help get her son back. The ambulance shows up and grabs Dorothy. Sandy slaps Jeffrey. So we cut to, it's later on. Sandy and Jeffrey are on the phone. To try and tell her dad like where Jeffrey is. Oh wait, no, sorry, I read that. So she says she forgives him and he apologizes, and she just says like, I couldn't watch that. And then they hang up, and then she's like crying again. She just says, "Where's my dream?" Which I had to put subtitles on for that because like, wait, what did she say? So that's what she says. Where's my dream? Oh wait, no, she does. I forget. Early on, she said she had a dream about robins, and she was like, that's where she kind of gets the idea that like her and Jeffrey should be together or something like that. So I forgot about that. So
yeah.
Jeffrey goes to Dorothy's place. We cut to Sandy gets on the phone and try to tell her dad where Jeffrey is. Cut back, Jeffrey goes into the apartment, and there's a guy bound and gagged in a chair, probably dead. He is. We'll find that. And then Detective Tom, the guy in the yellow suit, is standing there with a head wound, not moving.
Yeah, no, I mean, you could see like part of his brain.
Yeah.
It's really it's one of those scenes I love because there's blood like all over the kitchen.
And there's still blood pouring down the guy,
Yeah,
the detective, the yellow suit detective. So,
these are these David Lynch scenes I love. It's like, what's going on? Like, the violence already happened. You're just showing up. Like, what is this?
well, first they had the camera on Jeffrey, and he walks around the corner. He's like, "Oh shit!" And he hops back into like the kind of like the cubby area or whatever, the little hallway.
Alcove, yeah.
Yeah, alcove. And then he like kind of like goes back, and we don't see it yet. It's like, wait, what did he see? And then why is he like coming back to it? And then they get to that. It's like, oh, okay, yeah. There's like two guys shot in the head here. Okay. We presume okay, this is probably Dorothy's husband here that's dead in the chair. We know it is essentially because they cut to his ear that's missing. Tom's radio comes on. That's the detective. The cops are about to raid Frank Booth's place, so we intercut to a shootout with the cops.
Which is like a weird scene of like people pumping shotguns and firing them, and cops laying on the ground and shooting from the window, but we don't. There's like it doesn't seem to relate to anything. It's like, oh, this is going on, but it's not like Heat where this is like, oh, this is the penultimate scene. Like, no, there's just some weird shit going on the other end. You know, we're more worried about like brain wound guy.
Well, Jeffrey says, I'm going to let them find you on their own. And then he leaves the apartment. And as soon as there's like music playing, and as soon as he leaves the apartment, the music just stops immediately.
And let's not forget the scene where the man in the yellow suit, like his radio goes off and his arm like twitches violently. It's like, it's frightening. It's like, oh, what the hell's going on here?
As Jeffrey's leaving, he spots Frank in a disguise approaching the apartment. This is where we have a flashback of
well-dressed man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he realizes that was Frank. Frank is like walking up the stairs and he spots Jeffrey. So Jeffrey runs back in the apartment. Jeffrey knows that Frank has a police radio, and so does he because he took it from the Tom. Is it Tom? The yellow detective guy?
Yeah, I think it's that.
Okay, I'll just call him Tom. I forget. I wrote two names, so
I was thinking Curious George. It's like the man in the yellow suit. Yeah, Detective Tom Gordon. Yep.
Okay, Tom. Okay. So Jeffrey knows he has a radio, and so he's calling Detective Williams on the radio, and he's like, "Oh crap! Like Frank has a radio too." So then he sets up a ruse to tell him that, like, I'm hiding in the back room, and so then he goes and hides in the closet from earlier, so they're in different places. Frank huffs his drugs again, and then he goes in the room and starts shooting out the place. He has a silenced handgun that he has to rack every time he shoots it, which is a real thing.
Yeah, it's typical. Especially in your larger caliber, like your 45s and stuff. Yeah, they get all the burnt powder and stuff just gets blown back into the gun within the silence, even with the modern stuff. And yeah, you got to
yeah. Also, there's something even with a 45 that's subsonic. Sometimes you have to, like, if you want to be even quieter, you have to have a smaller load that's not actually going to cycle the round and eject itself. So you just have to cycle it yourself. So.
Yeah. It happens with Glocks even.
Jeffrey, like as he hears the shooting, runs out of the closet and grabs Tom's revolver out of his coat and goes back in the closet. Frank's trying to figure out like where he's hiding, and then he says he's in the closet, and he opens the door, and even though he knows like, this kid's in here, he's surprised when he's holding the gun and doesn't do anything, and then Jeffrey shoots him in the head.
Yeah, and it's actually a fairly gory like headshot, even though it's not like you're not witnessing it full on. It's like, oh yeah, Frank's head clearly like explodes, like out of the top of it at least.
Well, it definitely when they showed him on the ground, you see like like strands of brain on the ground.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's not like a modern day like CG headshot. It's pretty like explosive and violent. Like, yeah, that's what happens if you fire a 357 Magnum into someone's head point blank range. It's gonna look like that.
Detective Williams and Sandy show up, and then he sees Jeffrey kind of distraught that he had to kill a person. He's just like, "It's all over, Jeffrey." Um, and then Sandy and Jeffrey are in the dark hallway, and they kiss as the screen fades to white. Then we cut to a shot pulling out of Jeffrey's ear. He sees like a robin, which is the weird like mechanical robin they built for this. So.
Which I heard was done on purpose because it's about like the fakeness of the belief that like, oh yeah, when the robins show up, we'll be fine. And it's like, well, it's a obviously fake robin, and they probably could have made a better one, but it's like, oh no, we want to make it look fake because it's got a bug in its mouth.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, it's eating the evil. See, we're fine, but it's all fake, which is, I like that interpretation. So I'm going to say, yeah, good.
It's also a genius thing that David Lynch can get away with, where it's like, is this cheap production or is this genius? And it's like only David Lynch gets to do that stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because there's definitely stuff like that in the last season of Twin Peaks, where it's like, oh, I could do this in like Adobe Illustrator, and it's like clearly David Lynch was just messing around with it, and it looks like, I mean, it is a bad amateur effect, but because it's David Lynch weirdness, it just works. You just roll with it.
Yeah.
And then, but also you mix it up with that scene where it's like the nuclear explosion, where it's like, oh, this is an amazing effect.
Yeah, this is like world. This is like, oh, did he get like Industrial Light and Magic to come in and do this? It's like the blue guys and the mushroom cloud and all that. I still remember that episode. We watched that together, I think, in Iowa.
Yeah.
And I found that to be like particularly, it's like, oh, this is so much weird. I can't absorb it. So I just had to do a running commentary of jokes because it was like almost too weird for me.
Jeffrey sees Robin. They go into like the kitchen, and Sandy and like his aunt see the Robin, and it's holding a bug. And then we cut back to like the montage of Americana, so we're just covering up the darkness again. with the
picket fence, the roses, all good.
We cut to Dorothy's in the park with her kid. She's playing with the kid. There's a very almost obvious interpretation but it seems too obvious. For it's like, well, this is all a dream, right? Like this never happened, or what's going on here? Because it's Jeffrey waking up, but it's like, nah, it happened. But the way it's set up is like, we're just going to pretend it didn't.
Well, it's kind of like what because David Lynch grew up in like post World War II America, and like that's where this like comes from. It's like, oh, there was horrible violence, like we were talking about before the podcast, but then we cover it up with like, oh, the flag and the hope of the future in America, and it's like this innocent place, but it's like, yeah, underneath it there's a lot of bad shit going on all the time.
Yeah.
Which is like, I do believe that is a legitimate theme in this. Like, you don't have to be like weird film art school to be that like, oh yeah, no, that's really what they're saying.
And then Blue Velvet plays the Isabella Rossellini version, and then the song ends, and then there's a shot of the sky, and then we cut to credits over the blue velvet curtains, and that's the end of the movie.
That's the movie. That's the show, folks. And it was, if you like Twin Peaks, this is a good, like, working out our Twin Peaks ideas movie. It's also good as a standalone thing, too.
Yeah. It's great visuals, music, all that stuff. I mean, it's an uncomfortable and weird movie, but, that's David Lynch. So.
Oh, well, yeah. That going in.
So we're sending a probe into space containing the supercut of scenes from the Imperfect Collection that is the Verhoeven Effect. We have one scene to choose from this movie. Nathan, what scene are we sending into space from Blue Velvet?
Oh, that's going to be a tough one. Because there's like, there's the obvious one, the intro, where his dad has some kind of, he's fitting on the yard. And then he falls over and then we see like the insects underneath. Like that's like the obvious big message of the film. Then, I think Suave Ben's apartment is like the real message of the film. Is like these are the gross characters that exist on the edge of town that are a part of your community. Drugs and violence and sex, like that's a part of every community in America, but we don't talk about it. It just, it's the people on the bad side of town where that goes on. But everyone's over there and everyone's looking for it, or if they're not, they're thinking about it. So I guess if I had to vote, I would say like the opening scene makes the most sense to explain.
We're not sending baby wants to fuck into space.
I mean, that's part of the disease. That's the disease that's being injected into Isabella. But it's not like, it doesn't really explain it. It's just like, oh, this is the face of it. But why is it that way? That's the more important message, I think.
You can find our
shit because it's a David Lynch movie. It doesn't matter. That's the magic of David Lynch. Like, yeah, it's whatever you think it is.
You can find our podcast at verhoeveneffect.com. You can, whatever platform of your choice, you can rate us, our podcast. You can rate us whatever you want. But the only thing the algorithm listens to is the highest rating. Remember, you control the algorithm. The algorithm doesn't control you. We have listener support at verhoeveneffect.com, or you can support us at a monthly stipend at either 99 cents, $4.99, or $9.99. We are at Twitter at Verhoeven Effect. You can find us on Facebook, Verhoeven Effect. You can find us on YouTube at American Greed Factory and watch both this and that show live and unedited. And we have t-shirts at belowthecollar.com/Greed Factory. So for the Verhoeven Effect podcast, I'm Conlon.
And I'm Nathan.
Goodbye, America.